We were made to be together. And that means that fellowship is the antidote for selfishness. So fellowshipping is something we have to learn to do. Learning to love is life's most important lesson. And you know that the scriptures, Jesus himself taught, he says, you can have all these gifts, but I'm going to say they're absolute rubbish as far as I'm concerned if there's no love there. 1 Corinthians 13. That means that true Christian fellowship, if it's true, it will be sacrificial. It means putting ourselves out for someone else. It means caring for another person and being committed to other people, other believers, as I am committed to Jesus Christ. How can you love God whom you haven't seen if you don't love the brother whom you do see? That means there's an inconvenience factor at the heart of authentic fellowship. Inconvenience. It's inconvenient to be here for you. It's inconvenient to fit you into my prayer time. The best way you can remember someone is to pray for them. Well, how many people do you notice this morning are absent from church? Have you noticed anybody? Well, what are you going to do about it after the service? Even if you don't phone them, you can pray for them. How many of you actually do that? How many of you actually follow through with prayer from Sunday morning church for brothers and sisters in Christ? Who did you rub shoulders with today, this morning? Who are you going to take into prayer during today or tomorrow? What do we mean by a welcoming ministry? And who has this ministry? Is it simply the people who are asked to do it for us, or are we all doing it with each other? Are you too big to be loving? What if God brought revival? Would the fellowship here be strong enough to carry it? So that it doesn't become a 5-minute wonder. Revival comes, there's the power of God that pours out, but the net isn't strong enough to contain it. God says, where are you? Where is your brother? Am I supposed to care? Is it my responsibility what happens to any other Christian at ECC in the congregation? Authentic Christian fellowship will have an inconvenience factor to it. Carrying a sense of responsibility as Christ did for every one of us on the cross. Being the Good Samaritan and not just coming to get my fix on a Sunday, the whoopee and the wowie, the jumping up and down that could be carnal if my heart isn't actually attached to God, that the worship was great because it had a good feel-good factor, but where was the fruit of fellowship? Where is the communion of saints? Why is it that I'm told only 40% of the men are in fellowship, in cell groups in this church? After all these years. Carry one another's burdens, says the Bible, and so fulfill the law of Christ. Carry one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Talking to members of my church this week, we were looking at this whole area about how we engage in prayer for each other. And a person was saying, I felt a burden for an ex-person because financially they're in a difficult situation. And I said, well, what did you do with it? How did you relate that to fellowship? Well, I didn't like to mention it to the cell group because I know that the cell group doesn't have the financial resources. I said, you belong to a church. The cell group is part of the church. We're responsible for each other. When did this come to the elders to see what money could be made available from the church for that person? Oh, we don't do that in our church. The Good Samaritan. I'll pay for this guy. I'll take him to the end. I'll pay for it. And if there's any more that you need, I'll give you the extra. Now, this moment, some pastors on the platform may be sweating like anything, wondering if 1,000 people can all rush to them at this moment and say, money, money, money. You know what I'm trying to say. Because love is practical. Others' welfare should be our chief concern. If it isn't, how can we say that we're walking with Christ?